On my 18th birthday, my parents said, "You're grown now, handle it yourself," and shoved me out with a single bag. Years later, they showed up claiming my house should belong to my brother because family matters most. They weren't prepared for my response. Imagine waking up on your 18th birthday, full of hope, only for your own parents to hand you a duffel bag and tell you to get out. That day, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally shattered my world, slamming the door on my face and changing everything forever. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a calculated, cold-hearted betrayal I never saw coming. 14 years ago, that morning started like any other birthday in the Williams household, which meant it was already kind of a letdown. My dad, Harold, ruled our house like the metal fabrication plant he supervised, all iron fist and no warmth. My mom, Susan, was a real estate agent who'd perfected the art of cold professionalism, brilliant for business, but it made her an emotional void as a parent. They'd always made it clear that my younger brother, Trevor, was their golden child, while I was just an obligation, something they tolerated. I came downstairs that Tuesday, half expecting at least some acknowledgement, maybe even the chocolate cake Susan used to make for Trevor's birthdays. Instead, my parents were at the kitchen table, stone-faced, with a packed duffel bag sitting by the back door. My stomach dropped. But trust me, I couldn't have begun to imagine what was coming. "Sit down, Delmar," Harold said, not even looking up from his coffee. That familiar, barely contained irritation in his voice. Susan kept her gaze fixed on some real estate listings, like this was just another transaction. "Happy birthday to me, I guess," I mumbled, trying to inject some humor into the frozen air. Neither of them even cracked a smile. "You're 18 now," Susan finally said, lifting those cold, blue eyes that had never shown me warmth. "That makes you a legal adult. We've done our job raising you, and now it's time for you to take responsibility for your own life." I just stared, waiting for the punchline, the twisted birthday surprise reveal. It never came. Harold stood up, pointing at the duffel bag. "We packed some clothes and essentials. You've got until noon to clear out your room. Anything else you want to keep. But remember, you'll need to carry it yourself." The words hit me like physical blows. "You're kicking me out? Today? On my birthday?" "We're helping you become independent," Susan corrected, her voice the same tone she used explaining property values to difficult clients. "You graduated high school last month, and you're legally an adult. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet." My eyes swept around that kitchen, where I'd eaten breakfast for 18 years, the family photos on the fridge where I was always an afterthought, the calendar where Susan meticulously marked Trevor's baseball games, but never anything important to me. "What about college?" I choked out, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. "We talked about community college. I was going to work part-time," Harold actually laughed. But there was zero humor in it. "We've been supporting you for 18 years. We've got Trevor's future to think about now, and frankly, we've done enough. You're smart enough and capable enough to figure things out on your own." As if summoned by his name, Trevor appeared in the kitchen doorway. 16, taller than me, with Harold's broad shoulders and Susan's sharp features. He looked from our parents to me, an unreadable expression on his face. "What's happening?" he asked, though something in his voice told me he already knew. "Your brother is moving out today," Susan explained matter-of-factly. "He's starting his adult life." Trevor's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't protest. He just nodded, grabbed a banana, and headed back upstairs. That casual dismissal, that quiet acceptance from my own brother, stung almost as much as my parents' coldness. I spent the next 3 hours in a daze, mechanically gathering my belongings. My room, which had never truly felt like mine, looked even more sterile as I emptied it. I packed another bag with books, a few photos, some sentimental things. But I had to leave behind my desk, my bed, most of my childhood. When noon arrived, Harold and Susan stood by the front door like security guards, waiting to escort me out. I slung both bags over my shoulders, still desperately hoping they'd change their minds, or reveal it was all some elaborate test. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked one final time. "That's for you to figure out," Harold replied. "You're an adult now, Delmar. Adults solve their own problems." I stepped onto the front porch and heard the door close behind me. The sound echoed in my chest, a final, brutal click. As I walked down the driveway, I saw Trevor watching from his bedroom window, his face pressed against the glass. Our eyes met for a moment, and I thought I saw something. Maybe sadness, maybe guilt. But he quickly pulled back. Standing on that sidewalk, with everything I owned in 2 bags, I felt smaller and more alone than ever before. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, but everything felt different. I wasn't a resident of Maple Street anymore. I was just a homeless teenager with nowhere to go. The first shocking twist in this nightmare came 2 days later. I was in the public library, trying to find jobs and apartments I couldn't afford, when Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, sat down beside me. "Delmar, honey, I was so sorry to hear about your troubles," she said, her voice full of concern. "I saw what happened Tuesday, and I've been worried sick about you." I appreciated her kindness, but I was too embarrassed to talk about it. "I'm doing okay, Mrs. Patterson. Just figuring out my next steps." She studied my face with the shrewd eyes of someone who'd seen 8 decades of human behavior. "Honey, I need to tell you something that might be hard to hear. I saw your parents loading up donation trucks 3 weeks ago. Big trucks. Goodwill and Salvation Army. They were hauling out furniture from your room, boxes of your old clothes, photo albums, even that baseball trophy you won in Little League." The words hit me like ice water. 3 weeks ago? Maybe longer, she nodded. "I saw them doing it multiple days, always when you were at school or work. They had this whole operation planned out, sweetheart. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision they made on your birthday." I stared at the computer screen, not seeing it. My parents hadn't kicked me out in a fit of frustration. They had been systematically erasing me from their home for weeks, disposing of my childhood and my history like unwanted clutter. That night, I slept in Riverside Park, on a bench near the playground where I'd spent countless hours as a kid. The irony was brutal. Lying there under a thin blanket I'd bought at a thrift store, staring up at stars barely visible through the light pollution, I realized it. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had planned my elimination with the same careful attention to detail Susan brought to her real estate contracts. The calculated nature of their betrayal hurt worse than the abandonment itself. This wasn't anger or disappointment in my choices. This was deliberate, methodical disposal of an unwanted child who had finally. Outdoors. He'd built Riverside Construction from a solo handyman operation into one of Springfield's most respected companies. What set him apart was his genuine interest in teaching, not just barking orders. He'd explain why we used certain techniques, show me how to read blueprints, correct my mistakes without making me feel stupid. "Most people think construction is just about muscle and sweat," Ray said one afternoon as we installed kitchen cabinets. "But the best builders are thinkers. You've got to see 3 steps ahead, anticipate problems, and understand how every piece fits into the bigger picture." I absorbed it all like a sponge. During lunch, he'd quiz me, challenging me to explain electrical systems or calculate load-bearing requirements. He lent me books on business management, project planning, customer service. We discussed them during our drives to job sites. 6 months in, Ray gave me more responsibility. Meeting clients, supervising small crews, ordering materials. I discovered a natural talent for seeing potential in damaged properties, calculating what it would cost to transform them. The revelation of Ray's true intentions came on a Friday evening. We'd just finished a major renovation, turning a rundown Victorian into a stunning family home. Ray suggested dinner to celebrate. Over burgers and beer at Mickey's Tavern, he started sharing stories I'd never heard. "I grew up in a house where I was never good enough," Ray said, staring into his beer. "My old man was a mean drunk who saw me as competition, not a son. My mother was too scared to stand up for me. The day I turned 17, I lied about my age and joined the army, just to get away." I listened, fascinated, as he described years of moving around, learning construction in the military, eventually settling in Springfield. He'd started his business with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox, sleeping in that truck until he could afford rent. "The reason I'm telling you this," Ray said, looking directly at me, "is because I recognize something in you that I saw in myself at your age. You've got intelligence, work ethic, and integrity, but you also carry yourself like someone who's been told he doesn't matter. I've been watching you for months, Delmar, and I know you're capable of far more than you realize." Then the conversation took an unexpected turn. Ray revealed he'd been testing me, giving me complex projects, responsibilities, to see how I handled pressure, authority. He'd sent me to difficult customers to gauge my communication. He'd even asked other contractors about me. Every test you've passed with flying colors, Ray continued. You show up early, work hard, treat people with respect, and you're constantly trying to learn and improve. More importantly, you've got the kind of character that can't be taught. You're honest, reliable, and you care about doing quality work. What came next changed the trajectory of my life completely. Ray explained he wanted to expand Riverside Construction into residential renovation and property flipping. He needed a partner to handle the business side while he focused on construction. He offered me a partnership deal. It included covering my tuition for night classes in business management and real estate, a substantial salary increase, and a percentage of profits. I need someone I can trust completely, Ray said. Someone who understands that our reputation is built on every job we complete. I think you could be that person, but I want you to think about it carefully before you give me an answer. I was so overwhelmed I could barely speak. No one had ever shown such confidence in me, offered such an incredible opportunity. After months of my parents telling me I was worthless, Ray's belief felt almost impossible to accept. Over the next weeks, I devoured everything about business operations, real estate markets, project management. Ray enrolled me in night classes at Springfield Community College, accounting, marketing, business law. During the day, he taught me advanced construction techniques, involving me in planning and budgeting. I had a natural aptitude for identifying undervalued properties. We'd drive through neighborhoods, and I'd point out neglected houses, calculate renovations, project profits. My living situation improved dramatically. I moved into a comfortable one-bedroom apartment. I bought a reliable used truck. I started a savings account for the first time. Most importantly, I developed the confidence that comes from being valued and respected by someone whose opinion matters. Ray's mentorship went beyond business. He included me in family dinners with his wife, Carol, and their adult children, giving me a glimpse of what a healthy family looked like. He remembered my birthday. He celebrated my achievements in college. He offered advice about finances, relationships, life decisions, without being preachy. For the first time since my 18th birthday, I began to understand that my parents' rejection said nothing about my worth and everything about their character. Ray saw qualities in me Harold and Susan had either missed or willfully ignored. Under his guidance, I started to believe I could build something meaningful. The partnership became official 6 months later. Our first property flip, bought a foreclosed house for $38,000, invested $22,000 in renovations, sold it for $79,000. Our profit was $19,000, more money than I'd ever seen. Ray insisted on splitting it equally, despite my minimal initial financial contribution. This is just the beginning, Ray said as we celebrated. With your eye for potential and my construction experience, we're going to build something special together. He was absolutely right. 5 years after that life-changing offer, Riverside Construction was one of the most successful renovation and investment companies in Central Missouri. Over 60 property flips, a portfolio of rental properties, a reputation for quality that kept us booked for months. My transformation was remarkable, even to me. I had an associate degree, expertise in construction, project management, and real estate investment. More importantly, I had the confidence that comes from proving you can overcome devastating setbacks and build something meaningful from nothing. Ray and I had a system that maximized our strengths. I handled the business, finding properties, negotiating, finances, agents, lenders. Ray supervised crews, quality control, technical aspects. Together, we transformed rundown houses into beautiful, functional homes. My personal life had also stabilized in ways I never imagined. I lived in a beautifully renovated craftsman house, a former investment property I'd fallen in love with. Original hardwood floors, restored crown molding, a kitchen I'd designed and installed myself. It was the first place that truly felt like home. I'd been dating Ashley Martinez for 8 months. Our relationship had slowly blossomed from friendship into something deeper. Ashley, a nurse at Springfield General, brought stability and warmth into my life. She appreciated my work ethic, but also gently reminded me to enjoy the success I was building. You work like you're still that scared 18-year-old living in a motel room, Ashley told me recently. But you're not that person anymore, Delmar. You've built something amazing, and you deserve to enjoy it. She was right, of course, but old habits die hard. I still saved aggressively, lived below my means, partly practical, partly fear that everything could disappear as suddenly as my family had. Ray understood. Our business success attracted attention. We were featured in local newspapers and magazines, highlighting our innovative approach. I spoke at real estate seminars, building a network of contacts. Our latest project was our most ambitious, renovating an entire city block of abandoned Victorian houses. The city offered incentives. It was huge, required more crews, multiple subcontractors, but the potential profits were massive. It was during this period of professional success and personal happiness that the first signs of trouble from my past began to emerge. The revelation came from Ashley's cousin, Maria, who had moved to Springfield from my hometown, Cedar Falls. I had the strangest encounter last weekend, Ashley told me over dinner. Maria visited friends back in Cedar Falls, ran into your brother at a sports bar. She mentioned knowing you, and he started asking all these detailed questions about your business, how well you were doing. Trevor. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my family in 7 years. Harold, Susan, and Trevor were strangers who happened to share my last name. What kind of questions? I asked, my gut clenching. Specific questions, Ashley said. About your house, your business, how much money you were making. Maria said it felt weird, like he was gathering intelligence, not just making conversation. She got the impression he already knew quite a bit about your success. A chill ran down my spine. Trevor had never cared before. His sudden curiosity suggested something calculated. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to my online presence. Our company website, local newspaper articles, my LinkedIn profile, they all detailed our projects, quotes from me, expansion plans. The disturbing realization hit me. Anyone wanting to research my success could find substantial information with minimal effort. If Trevor was gathering information, he'd found plenty. I decided to test my suspicions. I asked Ray to make some discreet inquiries with contractors and suppliers who worked in the region. What he discovered confirmed my worst fears. Multiple people reported being approached by someone claiming to be my brother, asking detailed questions about Riverside Construction's projects, profits, and future plans. He'd presented himself as someone proud of my success, considering investing. It's definitely reconnaissance, Ray said after compiling the reports. Someone is systematically investigating your business and personal finances. The question is why. I knew why, even if I didn't want to admit it. Harold and Susan had ignored my existence for 7 years. But now that I had measurable success, they were suddenly interested. Their interest wasn't pride. It was greed. It was entitlement. The thought of them re-entering my life after years of abandonment and character assassination made me physically sick. I'd worked incredibly hard to build something meaningful from the wreckage they'd left behind. The idea they might try to claim some portion of it was both infuriating and terrifying. What are you going to do if they show up? Ashley asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me hopes they'll stay away, but another part wants the chance to tell them exactly what I think of them and everything they put me through. What I couldn't anticipate was how much worse their eventual return would be than anything I'd imagined. Trevor's reconnaissance was just the beginning of a plan that would test every ounce of strength I had developed. But I wasn't the frightened teenager they'd thrown out anymore. I had allies now, resources, and most importantly, the kind of confidence that comes from proving you can overcome anything. When Harold and Susan finally made their move, I would be ready. The confrontation I had been dreading arrived on a crisp Saturday morning in October. I was in my workshop, restoring an antique oak table, when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Harold's silver Ford pickup and Susan's white BMW. I recognized them instantly, despite the years. My hands trembled as I set down my sandpaper. 7 years. I wasn't prepared for the emotional impact of their physical presence in my space. They looked older, of course, but carried the same arrogance, the same self-righteousness. Trevor emerged from Harold's truck. At 23, he was taller, broader, moving with an entitled swagger that chillingly reminded me of a younger Harold. He surveyed my property, clearly assessing the restored house, the landscaped yard, the quality vehicles. I met them on my front porch, deliberately positioning myself to block their access to my front door. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. They had once stood in their doorway to keep me out. Now, I stood in mine to keep them out. Well, look at this, Harold said, gesturing broadly at my house. Our boy Delmar has done quite well for himself. The casual possessiveness in his voice made my jaw clench. What do you want? Susan stepped forward, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Is that any way to greet your family? We're proud of what you've accomplished, honey. You've built something really impressive here. We heard about your business success, Trevor added, a tone I couldn't quite place. The whole town's talking about how well you're doing down here in Springfield. I studied their faces, searching for any genuine emotion, any remorse. What I saw was calculation, determination. People with an agenda. You still haven't answered my question, I said. What do you want? Harold cleared his throat, adopting the authoritative tone he used my entire childhood. We want to talk to you about family responsibilities. Making sure everyone is taken care of properly. Family responsibilities? I repeated slowly. That's interesting. Coming from people who threw me out with one bag and told the whole town I was a drug addict and a thief. Now, Delmar, Susan cut in, her practiced real estate agent voice smooth as silk. We know there were some misunderstandings in the past, but we're here to move forward as a family. We've always believed that family comes first, and we think it's time to make sure everyone benefits from the success that's been achieved. The euphemisms, the careful language. It told me everything. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about money, and what they believed they were entitled to claim from the life I had built without them. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling in my chest. You are not my family. You stopped being my family the day you threw me out and tried to destroy my reputation. You have no claim to anything I've built, and you are not welcome on my property. Trevor stepped forward, a smirk on his face that revealed his true character. Actually, big brother, we think we do have a claim. You see, Mom and Dad have been thinking about the future, and they believe this house would be perfect for me to start my own family. You're doing well enough that you could afford to buy something else, and it would mean a lot to the family if you made that gesture. The sheer audacity of their demand. They weren't asking for money or a loan. They were demanding my house, the home I had purchased and renovated with money I'd earned through years of hard work. You're out of your minds, I said, when I finally found my voice. This is my house, which I bought with my own money, and I'm not giving it to anyone. Harold's expression hardened. That intimidating scowl that had once terrified me now just looked pathetic and manipulative. Son, you need to think carefully about what family means. Trevor stayed loyal to us while you ran off and abandoned your responsibilities. He deserves some security and stability, and you're in a position to provide that. What responsibilities did I abandon? I demanded. You kicked me out. You told me I was on my own, and that I needed to figure out my own life. We helped you become independent and self-sufficient, Susan replied, with breathtaking hypocrisy. And now that you've achieved success, we think it's appropriate for you to help your brother achieve the same kind of stability. The conversation was surreal. They were rewriting history in real time, transforming their abandonment and abuse into some kind of gift. Their entitlement was so complete, so shameless, I wondered if they actually believed their own lies. But Trevor's next words revealed the true scope of their planning. The truth is, Delmar, Mom and Dad already promised me this house months ago, Trevor said, with a satisfied smile. We've been watching your success from a distance, and we decided that since I'm the son who stayed loyal and supportive, I should inherit the benefits of what the family has achieved. What the family has achieved? I repeated, incredulously. I built this life completely on my own, with no help from any of you. Family is family, Harold said, with finality. And family takes care of family. You can afford to buy another house, but Trevor is just getting started in life and needs the security that this property would provide. The final piece of their plan became terrifyingly clear when Susan pulled out a folder of documents from her purse. We've actually had our attorney draft some paperwork that would make the transfer simple and tax efficient. All you need to do is sign these documents, and Trevor can take over the mortgage and ownership. I stared at the folder in disbelief. They hadn't just decided to demand my house on a whim. They had consulted lawyers, prepared legal documents, planned this entire operation in advance. Their sense of entitlement to the fruits of my labor was so complete that they expected me to cooperate. Get off my property, I said quietly. Delmar, be reasonable, Susan began, but I cut her off. Get off my property right now, or I'm calling the police. Harold stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size, just like he had when I was a child. You're making a big mistake, son. We're giving you the chance to do the right thing for your family, and you're being selfish and ungrateful. I said, get off my property. Trevor's smirk widened as he delivered what he clearly thought was his knockout punch. You might want to reconsider, big brother. See, mom and dad are in some financial trouble right now, and they owe some people who aren't very patient about getting paid back. If you don't help out the family voluntarily, we might have to explore other options for getting what we need. The threat was clear, even with the vague language. They were in debt to dangerous people, and they viewed my success as their solution. If I didn't voluntarily give them what they wanted, they were prepared to use more aggressive methods. As I watched them walk back to their vehicles, Trevor turned one last time. We'll be in touch, Delmar. Family has a way of working things out, one way or another. After they drove away, I sat on my front porch for a long time. The people who had abandoned me, lied about me, tried to destroy my future, had returned to claim ownership of everything I had built. Their entitlement was so complete they'd expected me to hand over my house to the brother who'd watched silently as they threw me out. But what disturbed me most was Trevor's final threat, the implication they owed money to people who might be willing to use violence. This confrontation was just the beginning. My parents' desperation might make them capable of actions I had never imagined. I had spent 7 years building a life based on hard work, integrity, and the support of people who actually cared about me. Now, I was going to have to fight to protect that life from the very people who should have been celebrating my success instead of trying to steal it. The war for my independence was about to begin. And this time, I wasn't going to be the helpless teenager they had discarded. I was going to fight back with everything I had learned and everyone who had supported me along the way. The week after their visit was filled with sleepless nights and careful planning. I knew they'd be back, and I knew their next approach would be more aggressive. Trevor's threat about other options screamed desperation. I spent that week consulting with attorneys, reviewing my business records, and researching my parents' current situation. What I discovered confirmed my worst suspicions, revealing the true scope of their financial catastrophe. Harold had accumulated over $70,000 in gambling debts to a network of underground bookmakers. Susan had enabled his addiction, refinancing their house and liquidating retirement savings to cover his losses. They were facing losing their home, their savings, maybe even their physical safety. More disturbing, they'd already tried to use my success as collateral. Susan had told several lenders I was a wealthy contractor who'd guarantee their debts, using newspaper articles about my business as proof. When those lenders called me to verify, I learned the full extent of their deception. But the most shocking revelation came from Ray, who'd been doing his own digging. Through his network, he'd learned Harold was telling people in Cedar Falls that I owed him money for my upbringing, and he was planning to collect by claiming my assets. They're setting up a narrative, Ray explained in his office. They're telling people you're ungrateful, and they have legitimate claims to your property. If they can't manipulate you, they're preparing to take more aggressive action. That aggressive action came sooner than expected. Thursday evening, as Ashley and I were having dinner, my phone rang. Unknown number. The voice was unfamiliar, but carried a calm menace that made my blood run cold. Is this Delmar Williams? Who is this? My name is Marcus. I represent some people who are owed money by your father. I understand you're a successful businessman who cares about his family's well-being. The implication was clear. Harold's creditors were involving me, using my parents' lies about family obligations to justify harassment. I don't owe my father any money, I said firmly. Whatever debts he has are his responsibility, not mine. That's not how your parents explained the situation to us, Marcus replied. They seem to think you'd be willing to help them out of their current difficulties. Maybe we should have a conversation in person to clear up any misunderstandings. I hung up immediately and called the police. The officer said the call itself wasn't a crime, but advised me to document everything and take precautions. That night, Ashley and I stayed at Ray's house. The realization that my parents had involved dangerous people forced me to confront the possibility that my physical safety and Ashley's might be at risk. The final confrontation came 3 days later, but not how I'd expected. Instead of my house, Harold, Susan, and Trevor appeared at the Riverside Construction office during business hours. They clearly thought a public setting would give them an advantage. I was in a meeting with a client when Ray knocked. Your family is in reception, demanding to speak with you. I excused myself. There they were, sitting on the couch like legitimate visitors, not the extortionists they'd become. "We need to settle this family business once and for all," Harold announced as soon as he saw me. "We've tried to be reasonable, but you've been stubborn and selfish. Now we're going to explain your responsibilities to you in terms you can't ignore." The presence of other clients and employees forced me to maintain composure, but anger boiled inside me. They were willing to bring their manipulation into my workplace. "This is not the place for this conversation," I said quietly. "You need to leave immediately." "We're not leaving until you agree to help your family," Susan replied, with that same cold determination. "Your father owes money to people who aren't going to wait much longer, and you're the only one who can solve this problem." Trevor leaned forward, his familiar smirk in place. "Come on, Delmar. You've got this successful business and that nice house. You can afford to help out the family that raised you and gave you the values that made your success possible." The hypocrisy of their claims about giving me values was breathtaking. I almost laughed. But what happened next changed everything, giving me the opportunity I'd been waiting for to end their manipulation permanently. Ray appeared in the reception area, carrying a thick folder. His expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. He looked directly at Harold and Susan before speaking, his voice carrying throughout the office. "Before this conversation goes any further," Ray announced, "I think everyone should know that Delmar and I have been expecting this visit for quite some time. We've been investigating your activities, your financial situation, and your plans for involving my business partner in your personal problems." Harold's confident expression faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" Ray opened the folder, reading from documents with the precision of a prosecutor. "I'm talking about the $73,000 you owe to illegal gambling operations. I'm talking about the fraudulent loan applications where you listed Delmar as a guarantor without his knowledge or consent. I'm talking about the threats you've made through intermediaries to extort money from my business partner." The color drained from Susan's face as Ray continued. "I'm also talking about the character assassination campaign you conducted 7 years ago, when you told employers throughout Cedar Falls that Delmar was a drug addict and a thief. We have sworn statements from witnesses who heard those lies directly from your mouths." But Ray wasn't finished. He looked directly at me before delivering the revelation that would change everything. "Most importantly," Ray continued, "I want everyone to understand that Delmar Williams is no longer your son in any legal sense. 3 years ago, I legally adopted him as an adult. He chose to become my son, and I chose to become his father. That makes me his next of kin, his business partner, and his legal heir." The silence in the office was deafening. Harold, Susan, and Trevor stared at Ray and me in complete shock, unable to process what they'd just heard. "The adoption was Delmar's idea," Ray continued, his voice softer, but no less firm. "And it was my honor to accept him as my son. Unlike some people, I recognize his character, his integrity, and his value as a human being. He has earned everything he has achieved, and no one has any claim to his success except the people who actually supported and believed in him." I pulled out my own folder of documents and placed it on the coffee table in front of my former family. "These are copies of the adoption papers, along with documentation of every lie you told about me, every fraudulent loan application you submitted, and every threatening contact you've made. I've already given copies to the police, the FBI, and the attorneys who are handling the harassment and extortion charges we're filing against you." Trevor's smug confidence had completely evaporated. You can't do this. We're your family." "No," I replied, with a calmness that surprised even me. "Ray is my family. Ashley is my family. The people who believed in me and supported me when you threw me away like garbage are my family. You are strangers who happen to share my original last name." Harold stood up, fists clenched, clearly ready for physical intimidation. But Ray stepped between us, with the kind of protective instinct that real fathers show for their children. "I wouldn't recommend that," Ray said quietly. "This building has security cameras. There are witnesses present, and the police are already aware of your threats and harassment. If you touch my son, you'll be arrested before you make it to the parking lot." Susan tried one final manipulation, appealing to emotions that no longer existed. "Delmar, honey, we know we made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Families should forgive each other and work together to solve problems. You stopped being my parents the day you threw me out," I replied. "And you proved you learned nothing from that mistake when you came here demanding my house and threatening me with violence." Real parents celebrate their children's success. They don't try to steal it. I gestured toward the folder on the table. Those papers include restraining orders that prohibit all of you from contacting me, visiting my home or business, or involving me in your financial problems in any way. If you violate those orders, you'll be arrested immediately. As they walked toward the door in stunned silence, I delivered the final message that would end their manipulation forever. Harold, Susan, and Trevor Williams. I called after them, using their full names deliberately. I want you to understand something very clearly. I built my life from nothing after you discarded me. I succeeded because of my own work and the support of people who actually cared about me. You have no claim to anything I've achieved, and you never will. Stay out of my life permanently. After they left, Ray put his hand on my shoulder, that paternal pride and support I'd never experienced from Harold. I'm proud of you, son, he said. That took courage, and you handled it perfectly. For the first time in 7 years, I felt completely free from the toxic influence of the people who had given me life, but had never been my true family. The legal adoption had been more than just paperwork. It had been a declaration that family is defined by love, support, and choice, rather than biology or legal obligation. The war for my independence was over, and I had won decisively. The weeks following that confrontation brought a cascade of consequences that demonstrated the power of truth and preparation over manipulation and entitlement. The legal system moved swiftly. Harold was arrested within 10 days for identity theft and loan fraud. Federal investigators got involved due to the scope of his gambling debts and the criminal networks he was dealing with. Susan faced her own legal consequences, her real estate license suspended, and former clients coming forward with complaints of misrepresentation. Trevor, who had been so arrogant, now faced the reality of his parents' criminal behavior and his own complicity. The investigation revealed he'd been actively gathering intelligence about my business for over a year, acting as their scout for their extortion attempt. But the most satisfying consequence was watching their entire narrative of family loyalty and obligation collapse. The people they'd told about their ungrateful son learned the truth about their abandonment, their lies, and their manipulation. The community that once respected Harold and Susan now understood them to be criminals who had tried to exploit their own child's success. The restraining orders were never violated. They finally understood I was no longer the helpless teenager they had discarded. Ray's legal adoption of me became a source of strength and pride. At 32, I finally had the father I'd always deserved, someone who believed in my potential, celebrated my achievements, and stood by me. Carol, Ray's wife, embraced her role as my stepmother with warmth, and their adult children welcomed me as their brother without reservation. The adoption also solidified my inheritance and estate planning, protecting everything I'd built. Ray and I restructured our business, planning for Riverside Construction's long-term growth as a family enterprise. My relationship with Ashley deepened through all of this. She'd seen me at my most vulnerable and angry, and her unwavering support convinced me she was someone I wanted to build a future with. 6 months after the legal battles ended, I proposed to her in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented everything I'd learned about creating something beautiful from raw materials and determination. Ray officiated our wedding, exercising his authority as both my father and an ordained minister. The guest list included people who had supported and believed in me, colleagues, classmates, neighbors, and Ashley's family, who welcomed me with a kind of acceptance I'd never experienced from biological relatives. The absence of Harold, Susan, and Trevor wasn't sadness, but a confirmation that I had successfully separated myself from toxic relationships. Real family celebrates your happiness. They don't try to steal it. Our business thrived. We expanded into affordable housing development for young adults aging out of foster care and other disadvantaged populations. The work was personally meaningful because I understood the challenges of starting adult life without family support. Each project represented an opportunity for someone else to build a stable foundation. I established a scholarship fund at Springfield Community College for students pursuing construction and business management, particularly those without family assistance. Seeing young people overcome obstacles similar to my own reminded me how far I'd come from that terrified teenager, sleeping in parks. The legal resolution of my parents' crimes brought a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Harold was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Susan received 18 months and substantial financial penalties, forcing them to sell their home. Trevor avoided criminal charges but faced civil liability. More importantly, their convictions created a permanent legal record that validated everything I had experienced. The court proceedings documented their abandonment, their lies, their attempts to exploit my success. No one could ever again claim I was an ungrateful son who abandoned his family. The truth was now public record. The final piece of my healing came through Mrs. Patterson, that elderly neighbor who had told me about my parents planning their disposal of my belongings. She contacted me through Ray to express her pride. "I always knew you were a good boy who deserved better than how they treated you," she said during a phone call that brought tears to my eyes. "I'm so happy to see you found people who recognized your worth and helped you build the life you deserved." Her validation meant more than any business success, because it came from someone who had witnessed the entire journey. She saw the scared teenager with nowhere to go. Now, she saw the successful adult who had created a meaningful life despite overwhelming obstacles. As I reflect on the 14 years since my 18th birthday, I understand that being thrown out by Harold and Susan was actually a gift, though I couldn't recognize it at the time. Their abandonment forced me to develop independence, resilience, and the ability to recognize authentic relationships. I learned that real family isn't determined by blood or legal documents, but by love, loyalty, and mutual support. Ray became my father not because of paperwork, but because he saw potential in me and invested his time, wisdom, and care. Ashley became my life partner not because we shared a last name, but because she supported my dreams and stood by me. The most important lesson from my journey is this: your past does not determine your future unless you allow it to. Harold and Susan tried to convince me I was worthless, but their opinions were based on their own limitations. When I found people who believed in me, I achieved things none of us had imagined possible. Everyone deserves to be loved, supported, and believed in. If your biological family cannot provide that, it is not a reflection of your worth. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from toxic relationships and build new ones based on mutual respect and genuine care. Success isn't just about money or professional recognition. Real success is about building a life surrounded by people who celebrate your happiness, support your dreams, and stand by you. It's about becoming the kind of person others can rely on and creating something positive in the world. Today, I wake up every morning in a home filled with love and respect, surrounded by people who value me for who I am. I work alongside a father who taught me that integrity and hard work are their own rewards, building projects that improve communities and create opportunities for others. The scared 18-year-old on that porch with one duffel bag could never have imagined this life. But every difficult step of that journey was necessary to become the man I am now, and I wouldn't change any of it. Because each challenge taught me something valuable about resilience, determination, and the importance of choosing your family wisely. The people who abandon you or try to exploit your success are telling you everything you need to know about their character. Listen to them, learn from that information, and then build your life around people who demonstrate, through their actions, that they genuinely care about your well-being. Family comes first, but real family is earned through love and loyalty, not demanded through manipulation and entitlement. Have you ever had to choose between toxic family relationships and your own well-being? How did you find the strength to build new connections based on genuine care and mutual respect? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming challenges and building meaningful success. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by how others choose to treat them. Thank you for listening to my journey. I hope it reminds you that your future is always brighter than your past when you surround yourself with people who truly believe in your potential.